Hey guys, we're back for our second episode of the Fabrication Station podcast, and today we have Joshua Shaw. He's a hot rodder, race car driver, fabricator, and a historian. Me and Josh go way back, and we've got a lot of good stories, bad stories, and some that are in between. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Joshua.
I'm from here where we're sitting. Where are we, in Goshen, Ohio? The next town over is Milford, Ohio. We're kind of right between the two.
Yep.
And I grew up here. You and I grew up kind of in the same area. I originally grew up over towards Loveland side, but then I moved to the Stone Lick Valley in 92. And I remember riding my bike down to like the covered bridge and what everyone called was the Devil's Church. And that you were down in that area, weren't you?
Yeah, we were kind of.
You had family down there, right?
Yeah, we were closer to the Owensville side of the road. Like you would go down your road, and instead of hanging a right to go to the bridge, you'd go left to our house.
Okay.
So I think we were only a few.
I never knew you as a kid, but I knew you like we were close. I didn't really know anyone back there. I mean, it's not a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like your neighbor's way far away. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you were quite a bit older than I.
I'm 45 now.
Yeah, so I'm 35.
Okay, yeah. Shit, you were a pup. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because we're all. Me and Chuck Craver always say, the water doesn't run too deep in the valley, because I'm related to Chuck, and then Chuck's married to your sister.
Oh, yeah.
So we're all connected one way or another.
Yeah, everyone. And then Chuck's a Craver, and the best saying I've heard is you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a Craver.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're in the Stone Lick Valley, they're all Cravers.
Oh yeah, it's Craver and Yeager and Wagner, and everybody is connected somehow.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. And then I'm a Shaw, and there's Shaw Farms here, which is massive. And we're not related to that Shaw.
Yeah.
So like it's the same three last names. But yeah, I grew up in this area, in a racing and hot rod family. My dad was a hot rodder, and I grew up around hot rods. We were like, we had 57 Chevys that were later like gasser types and all kinds of stuff. And then I had like backyard go karts. And then from day one, we were going to sprint car races.
Yeah.
Drag race. Like Edgewater is the local drag strip. We'd go to Edgewater and we'd go to Lawrenceburg. Lawrenceburg's a local dirt track. And I can remember going to like 50-50 growing up, because Dad was kind of more of a drag racer, but he liked watching sprint cars. He had watched sprint cars since he was a kid. And I remember there was a Saturday night, I'm thinking I was like 9 or 10, and we went to Edgewater. And by like 8:30, I must have been just looking and acting bored as shit. And Dad knew it. And he looked at me and said, if we leave here now, we can go to Lawrenceburg and catch the feature. And I smiled real big. I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, we didn't go back to the drag strip, for years.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen you at the drag strip other than like at the Hot Rod Reunion. It's always always the dirt track.
Edgewater's a really nice, we're lucky to have Edgewater. It's a nice drag strip for, it's got a lot of history. And I've been there on Friday night testing tunes, driving my hot rod there, and I've drag raced there a couple times. It's just drag racing just never took hold when you got dirt track racing. And then at that same time, we were going to Lawrenceburg. At 10 years old, my dad had some coworkers that were racing go-karts at West Union dirt track. There was a West Union dirt track for go-karts that was one of the nicest go-kart tracks ever. This thing was like, the quality of the track was amazing. Guys still talk about how good the track was.
Yeah, and West Union's a haul from Milford. It's probably like an hour.
It's like an hour. And his buddies raced go karts there. And at 10 years old, we went there. We went to watch, and what I didn't know was Dad had already set it up for me to like take a ride in one of the guys' go karts.
Oh, cool.
And Dad he hid my helmet and stuff in the truck. So when we got there, I got to take a ride on the track, and it was the second to the last race of the year. Actually, I was 9. I was 9 years old when that happened. And then the very next weekend was the last weekend of the year. I went and I got to race that guy's go-kart. It was a 5-horse Briggs. And I raced it as in the junior class. And don't even remember how I did, but I was hooked. And that winter for Christmas, I got a Margay go-kart, like a racing cart.
Yeah.
Dad bought a used go-kart, which we still have hanging on the wall. And that following year, when I was 10 years old, we started racing go-karts every weekend at West Union. And that started the racing career of go-karts, and then just from there to go-karts to mods to midgets to everything, anything you can think of.
Yeah, you've raced some really cool stuff. Like one of my favorites is, the GT40.
Yes.
That was just an amazing car.
That's awesome. That's through a guy named Ken Kaiholtz. Some people refer to him as Machine Gun Ken.
Yeah.
Ken's a prolific machine gun collector and designer and holds patents. He's a neat guy.
Yeah.
And he's big race fan. And I started messing with, we raced full time from the time we started racing go-karts and we got into modifieds. There was a local guy here named Willis Freeman, in Lloyd's Radiator. Everyone around here knows of Willis, and he's passed away now. But he was a MacGyver type. He could build anything out of nothing. Just one of the best fabricators around here. Just a genius, smart type guy.
Yeah.
Would just make the shit he'd build, you just shake your head at. And he was racing go-karts with us, and then he decided he wanted to go race modifieds, and he wanted me to drive for him when I was 16. So at 16 years old, by then I was a hired driver in go-karts. I was driving for different owners of go-karts, and then went to drive for Willis in the modified. And we ran mods. I ran a mod for Willis for 9 or 10 years, and that worked out. That was awesome. But when about the year 2000, I had graduated college and I wanted to build hot rods full time. And the problem with that was, if you're going to build hot rods full time, you need to be at the hot rod shows and do the hot rod thing. Mm-hmm. Well, that's on the weekend as well. So you can't really race on the weekend and do hot rod shows. And I just got to a point where I wanted to do the hot rod thing. So I retired from full-time racing in 2000. And we actually won a championship at Lawrenceburg that year. So we were kicking ass, right at the pinnacle of our modified program. And I told Dad, I said, I think I'm done this year. Dad laughed. He said, I've been done for a while, waiting on you.
Yeah.
So, and Dad had already, he was playing with hot rods too. So I went and built hot rods for a while. And then what happened was I got into vintage sprint cars and restoring vintage sprint cars. And one day.
Because that's when I met you. You were doing the Ellison Special.
Yeah. And that was for Ken Kaiholtz.
Yep.
One day Ken walked in my shop. I was living on the west side of Cincinnati. By then I'd moved over to the west side. And Ken walked in the shop. He knew what he wanted. He wanted Watson sprint cars from the 60s. And I restored 2 of them for him right away. And then I've restored a bunch of cars for him. And through building that relationship with Ken and becoming good friends, he owns a Ford GT, a 2006, an 06, the second generation, I guess you call them. He's a big Ford fan. He loves the GTs. He owns an 06. And then I don't know how he met Doran Racing, Kevin Doran. Kevin Doran's a local race team here in Cincinnati that's one of the biggest, other than Wright Racing, the Porsche guys. Mm-hmm. Doran's probably one of the biggest teams in Cincinnati. He's won the Rolex 24 hours 4 times. That's as good as it gets. And he had developed that Ford GT. That Ford GT was a neat story. In 06, 07, when Ford came out with that, the whole point was the hardcores, the historians, we knew the Ford versus Ferrari story. This is way before the movie, way before all that stuff came out. But we all knew the Ford versus Ferrari thing and the history of the GTs going to Le Mans and winning. So when Ford came out with the GT in 06, of course, everyone's like, are you going back to Le Mans? Are you going to build a Le Mans car? And at the time, Ford did not want to. They didn't want to take that car on the race circuit. So they said, no, we're not building race cars. Well, that racers being racers find ways around that. And Doran Racing, he had a customer that wanted to build a race car out of the GT. So this is a badass story of how these guys did this. They had a buddy at a dealership that was a parts writer, basically. And when you look at a Ford GT, you have 3 parts of the car. The driver's hull is like the main hull. It's the cockpit. So it's the whole cockpit of the car, which is the body structure that the doors bolt to. Then it's rear engine. So the engine, whole rear cradle and suspension bolts to the back half. Mm-hmm. And then the front cradle bolts. So it's 3 pieces that bolt together to make a car. Dorn and those guys got the part number for those 3 pieces and went to the dealership and just ordered those 3 part numbers.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the guy at the dealership's like, yeah, we can get those. And he's like, you can? And they said, yeah. And he goes, we'll take 5 of each. And it went through. Like, they actually went through. And now, 5 Ford GT chassis showed up. Mm-hmm. No bodies, nothing. And there was they did get some phone calls, some red flags. Guys are like, well, what are you doing with these? And they just were like, well, we had a totaled car and we got to, replace the front cradle. So they got it, they kind of slipped it by Ford. And when they got the cars, then they built the carbon fiber bodies and they built a GT car, which is that's how you would do. You start with a body in white, like Ford and Chevy does, and then you build a GT car. So Doran Racing built 5 of those cars to take to Le Mans. And they got, of the 5, they got 2 done. And by the time they got them done, Ford had stepped in and other big lawyers had stepped in and said, don't you dare take that to Le Mans. We don't want to be represented at Le Mans. That's, it's not us. If we're going to Le Mans, it's going to be Ford going to Le Mans. So they kind of got shut down. They didn't get in trouble, but they got their hands slapped. Like, don't do it. But these cars were built. And those first 2 cars became the Robertson cars. And Robertson just passed away like a week ago. Those cars went and raced and won a bunch. I mean, they won a lot. That was in 06, 07. Fast forward to 2014, Machine Gun Ken and Doran are buddies, and Ken's walking through the shop and looks up on the shelf, and there's the GTs. The other 3 are sitting there, and they never got built, never got raced. So Ken said, well, can we build one? And Doran said, yeah. So they pulled one off the shelf, built it, and that's the car I drove.
Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing problem to have. You just got, GTs stacked up on the shelf.
Stacked on the shelf, exactly. Yeah. And they built that car to go racing with SVRA, and we went racing in 16 and 17, and then we won the championship in 17. And that was such a change for me because I had only ever raced dirt. I'd ran dirt ovals my whole life, and I had ran street races with go-karts, which is the only time I was ever on pavement. Had never ran road course races at all. I made fun of those guys. I called them wine and cheese racers. I had no use for road course racing. And then but it's a Ford GT, and I'm like, hell yes, I'll drive it. So got in that thing, and to go race with SVRA, you have to have licensing, like certified licensing. So I had to go through training, and there was 4 or 5 different tracks you could choose from. Like, you pay to go to these, basically a racing school. I went to the Mid-Ohio class. You got to go there and get a certificate. And I went there, and turned out one of the instructors was, I'm drawing a blank, famous sprint car guy, Pancho Carter's son. So he's a midget racer, hell of a midget racer. He, right away, he knew I was into open wheel cars, so we clicked. But then as the weekend went on, the main instructor was a guy by the last name of Byrne, Tommy Byrne, B-U-R-N-E. Tommy Byrne was an F1 driver that was like the ultimate missed opportunity F1 driver. He was a raw talent in the late 70s, early 80s. He was a raw talent that was beating all the big teams, but he came from nothing. He had no name, he had no money, and they shunned him. And the politics of F1 kept him from going to the top.
Yeah.
They made a documentary on him. It's a wild story. But I get there, and those are my instructors. So we had a blast. We had a ball. Yeah. And then I got certified and went racing, and really, really quickly found out that road racing's badass. I liked it. I took to it really well. That was the key. If I went there and wasn't fast, I'd have said it sucked. But I was fast right away. We went to Indianapolis to the road course. I got in the car. We had a professional driver shake the car down, said, yeah, it's good to go. And then my teammate was one of the Nissan Nismo factory drivers. He's from here in Cincinnati. I'm drawing all kinds of blanks today. Brad Yeager. Brad Yeager. They got a hell of a car collection. Brad was my co-driver. Brad took the car out, ran it first, basically set the times that was like on par. And by the end of the first day, I was on his times, which was not expected. They figured it'd take me like 3 or 4 races. And by the end of the first day, I'm on time. Yeah. So it happened really quick, which is, and I mean, I can sit here and say that I was badass, but it was the car, and it was Doran. Doran has a dirt background. He grew up his dad was the promoter at Tri-County Speedway. Okay. It's gone now, but Queen City Speedway, his dad was the promoter of that. So he grew up around racing and dirt racing. And it was cool because my vocabulary, my background comes from dirt. And the way I talk about a car and what it's doing on a racetrack is from dirt. I don't say understeer. I say the thing's got to push or it's loose.
Yeah.
You know, and then Brad grew up on course racing, and he was trained from the get-go to run road course. So his vocabulary is totally different. But Doran was a awesome enough crew chief that he could understand us both. And, you know, he just told me, he said, you tell me what the car's doing like it's a dirt car. Treat it like a dirt car, tell me what it's doing, and I'll make it fast. And he did. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, too, is, I mean, for one, you're a really good driver, and, you know, with all the experience you've got. But the other thing is you like to push things to the edge.
Oh,
I mean, the entire time I've known you, you're always straddling that line of living and dying.
I've got the broken bones and the broken body to back it up.
Yeah, because I think I remember you telling me once, like, you never expected to live to like 35 because you were just living so hard.
No, and you hear guys say that all the time, but it was for real. My buddy Tom Sparrow, I remember he called me on my 30th birthday and said, you know, I've known you since you were 12 years old. We didn't think this was going to happen. Yeah. And he said, and you always said it wasn't going to happen. And I said, well, now we'll try to make it to 40 and see if that happens.
Yeah, and like Whitney was over here the other day, and we were talking about it when we went to dinner. You know, he was, I forget how old Whitney is. I mean, he's about your age, but he's like, man, who would have thought? And I'm like, I know. Like, I've not even known Whitney all that long, but it's like I never would have expected it.
No, we like turning it up.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that the other day. I'm very, I've lived a wild life and done a lot of wild shit and crazy shit, dumb shit, wild shit, fun shit, all the above. And I wouldn't change it. I love it. I know guys that, I know a lot. I shouldn't say I know them. There are a lot of people that you get out of high school, you get out of college, and you get a job, and you focus, and you start a family, and you work towards like retirement. Yeah. And then you focus, and you kind of live a good life and straight line and try to get that retirement. And then in their head, they think, well, when I retire, that's when I'll kick back and relax and have a good time and party and have fun. I did the exact opposite. I spent my 20s and 30s doing the dumb shit, wild shit, living life then. And then when I got to 40, that's when I settled down and got a real career and a family. And so I'm doing it backwards.
Yeah. But I mean, that leads to all the good stories.
My theory was I wanted to do it when my body was young enough to do it.
Yeah.
I could fall off a roof of a house on fire and it wouldn't hurt that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Or jumping BMX bikes off your dad's back deck and
that was
into
best.
The creek.
Yes. Yeah. That we built a big ramp into his lake, the lake jump. That was excellent.
Yeah.
The BMX bikes are a funny subject with my dad. I grew up, riding BMX bikes and go-karts, mods, every kind of race car you can imagine I've been in, and all my worst injuries are from BMX bikes.
Yeah.
From bicycles.
Yeah, little kid bikes they're rough on you.
Hell yeah. So yeah, the Ford GT was just an amazing machine. I tell people that. I said it's the most impressive machine I ever operated. It was, you would catch yourself in that car if the car was right and a good track and everything, you'd go throw it into a turn and you could grit your teeth and throw that bastard in there and just think like, oh, I'm really going to lean on this car. And halfway through the turn, you'd realize the car was like at 50% waiting on you. Yeah. Like anytime you want to do this, I'm ready. Yeah. It's like, Jesus, this thing's got a lot left. I mean, it could bite you. I spun it out twice, just looped it out, nothing major, but it had so much left in it. Mm-hmm. The quickest I got to go in that car was 182 at Pocono. Yeah. The Oval. Yeah, we got to run around there wide open.
Yeah, speaking of Pocono, do you know Ellis Hubbard from the other side of town over by Harrison?
I don't believe so.
He's got 4 GT40s.
Oh, wow.
And one was an original Le Mans car.
Damn.
And he has one that a buddy of his raced at Pocono, and I think he said he went 205 on the street.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Oh,
that's cool.
And Ellis used to street drive that car before he lost some of his vision.
That's hard to do. That would be hard.
Yeah.
Because I've been there and I tried it. That was like, we were there with the vintage Indy cars, but we took the GT. And it was ready to run. And the promoter at Pocono that was promoting the event said he was a GT fan. And he said, hey, I can set it up so you guys, he's like, you guys can't take the GT out with the vintage Indy cars, because it's weird. But I can set it up so you guys go out and you have 5 laps, open green flag laps to go as fast as you want to go. Do you want to try it? And of course we're like, yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And Ken immediately said, can we go 200? And Doran said, I doubt it. Not without like a full day of testing. Doran's theory was, yeah, if we had a weekend, we could get it there, but we'd have to change everything about the car and really set it up for an oval. It was still set up for road racing.
Yeah.
We didn't touch it. So I went out and Doran said, just run it hard. You're fine. You know how to feel it. The problem with Pocono is, and this is a neat story because it leads to Ray Everham trying to do it in the Ghost. And Ray and I talked about that. So Pocono's front straightaway is a big, long straightaway. It's a tri-oval, so there is no back straightaway. The back straightaway has a kink in it, a bend in it. So the front straightaway is your only chance to go 200. 3 and 4 is a big, wide, rolling turn that you can carry a lot of speed through. So you come off 4 with a lot of speed, but 3 and 4 is also almost flat. There's no banking. So with 3 and 4, as a driver, you're trying to carry as much speed through 3 and 4 as you can. I say 3 and 4 when you go there. There's always, it says on the wall, turn 3 with a question mark. Yeah. Because it's a tri-oval and it's hard to tell. You come out of 3 and 4 onto the front straightaway, and you try to carry as much speed as you can. So as a driver, you're right on the edge of the car. The whole time the car's stepping out, it's trying to break loose because there's no banking. And you're on the throttle, so it's all about coming off 4. So I came off 4, and I remember the final lap, I came off 4 as hard as I could. I went all the way out to where, the mirror was within inches of the wall, used all the track I could, ran it down the front straightaway. I'm watching the digital readout on the heads-up display, and I'm watching it, it's 178, 79. And the problem is when you go into turn 1 at Pocono, turn 1's the opposite. It's banked like a wall, but it's tight. You got it. You slam into it. So yeah, it's fun. You can try for 200, but you forget the instant you hit 200, you're slamming into turn 1. Yeah. So you got to kind of time it right. I saw 180. I was watching, and as soon as I saw 180, I set up for the turn and backed out of throttle and started getting on the brakes. When we went back and read the car's computer readout, it hit 182. Yeah. So by the time it hit 182, I was already my eyes were on the corner and we were trying to get through there. Yeah. A year later, Ray Everham, good buddies, excellent guy. He takes his car, the Ghost, there, and Goodyear wants to sponsor it to go 200 at Pocono. And we'd had a talk beforehand. He said, I know you've tried it. What can you tell me about it? And I told him exactly what I just told you. It's all about coming out of 4. You got to get through 3 and 4 as fast as you can. And honestly, I don't know if you'll be able to do it. It's hard. And he was a smart racer. He said the same thing. He's like, I don't know. It's going to be hard. And he was kind of he was nervous because he told me that Goodyear and all them was acting like it was no big deal. Yeah. Oh, the car will do 200, no problem. You got the right gear. You got enough horsepower. It's all good to go. And that on paper shit don't mean nothing. Oh yeah. That's just like Bonneville, yeah, it's exactly. A whole different animal. All about that. Whoa, tire size and my cubic inch should go this fast. Yep. And so he went and tried it, and I told him, I said, I got to 182. I think you'll be able to get in the 190s pretty easy, but 200 is going to be hard to do. Ray went out and tried it once, and they got to 192, and he came in and he said, you were right. I don't think we're going to, he said that was everything it had. But they took some wing out of it, took a little bit of the angles of the wing out of it, changed a few setups on the car, and he went out, and when he was going for 200, he spun it and going into 3, just because like what we said, he's trying to go through 3 and 4 so hard. He spun it doing that. He never did go 200 in that car because it's so hard. Yeah. So when you say a guy went 200 in a Ford GT, that's impressive. Yeah. That's badass.
Yeah. I mean, you know how that stuff goes. It's like a fishtail. He may have, I don't know. But that's just the history with the car.
Yeah. I mean, the car is capable. Yeah. Especially those cars.
Yeah. Cause I think it's got a Gurney 427, in it, but I mean, it's one of the early ones. It's not a new GT.
The early 60s era. Yeah. Damn, those were cool. I'd like to drive one of those. It's funny when I was, 20 years ago, I would have dreamed, boy, I'd like to drive one of those. But at this point, I'm like, I'll probably drive one of those someday.
Yeah.
I might be able to figure that one out.
Yeah, because that's on like a, my 10-year list is to get, either a Superformance or, one of the other replica GT40s. And now Jim Laughlin's all hot on it.
Good.
I was up there over the weekend and he's like, what do you think about this one? And I'm like, you're going to beat me to the GT40, you asshole.
That's awesome, though. That's excellent.
Yeah, those are the kind of friends you need.
It is.
Peer pressure you into bad decisions.
Well, heck yeah. That's what racers do.
Yep.
I was thinking the other day, I'm going to try to I want to do a podcast on my own with one of my podcasts without a guest. I just want to list all the cars I've gotten to drive.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And it's a fine line of bragging and sounding like a prick, but I've gotten, because of my job and my situation, I've gotten to drive an amazing array of cars. And I mean, Indianapolis winning cars, famous race cars. And I never dreamed I'd get to drive those cars.
Yeah.
And, when I was in 6th, 7th grade, I would tell racing go-karts, every kid that raced go-karts was convinced he was going to win the Indy 500 someday. Yeah. If you didn't have that frame of mind, you shouldn't have been there racing. But Joey Carr and I both, we were convinced we were going to Indy. And I would tell my classmates, I'm gonna run at Indy someday. I'm gonna drive an Indy car at Indy, and I did.
Yeah.
It just wasn't it was the wrong era. It was the 100-year-old Indy car. So yeah, that I'm very proud to say I've driven an Indy car at Indy, and no, it was not a new one, but in a lot of ways, to me, that's just as cool.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm not really saying a whole lot in this one because you've got so many good stories and so much interesting history. And I mean, it's just the stuff you're involved with is, phenomenal. And I want you to talk about, the Harry Miller stuff that you're doing now. I mean, because that's just incredible.
Yeah. That started here in Cincinnati with me at Zakira's.
Yeah.
Zakira's Garage was here in Cincinnati. And
back when Dean still owned it.
Correct. Dean Butler owned it. And I found out about Zakira's. So I was, we grew up in racing and we were around hot rods. And in 2000, when I retired racing, I went and built hot rods. My dad started playing with old sprint cars. He got an old sprint car to restore. And I liked it. So then I after a while, I was interested more in it than the sprint cars than I was hot rods. I was at a cruise in. Do you remember? We also got to talk about mini trucks.
Oh yeah,
I'm a hardcore mini trucker. Do you remember my green Toyota with the checkered flag and the flames?
Yeah,
it had an air ride. I had that truck, and I was at the cruise in that was over at the Frisch's in Mount Carmel.
Yeah,
that cruise in, that Friday night cruise in.
I mean, that's been a long time ago.
Been a long time. Yeah, this was 90s. 90. I was sophomore in college. So like 96, 97.
Yeah, and we'll have to come back to your college career, with your artwork and stuff too. Because I mean, there's just so much to talk about. But.
I had that Toyota over there, and Dad had drove his. He had a 32 Ford pickup, and we were at the cruise in, and a guy came in an Allard, and at the time I didn't even know what an Allard was. It just looked like a neat looking car, and I never was big into like the MGs and the Austin Healey's and all the European like that type of car.
Yeah.
I wasn't really into them, but this Allard had a cool look, and it no fenders and had all these cool louvers. So Dad and I were walking through, and Dad's like, "Did you see that Allard?" I'm like, "No." And Dad knew enough. He said, "Lean down and look at the front suspension." And if you don't know Allards, it's a Ford I-beam, an old 40s Ford I-beam axle that all hot rodders know, and they cut them in half in the middle and make it hinge in the middle like swing I-beams on a Ford truck. And Allard did that. And if you're a hot rodder, you see that and you're like, oh shit, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I saw that and I was like, that's kind of bitching. And then I looked, and this thing's got injected Cadillac in it, Hilborn injected Cadillac's, engine. And I start, the hot rodder in me's like, this son of a bitch is a rocket.
Yeah.
This is a fast little car. Turns out the guy driving it was Jim Himmelsbach. And we start talking to Jim, and Jim introduces himself. And Jim's a great guy, good talking guy. And he said, oh, yeah, we got a shop down in Marymount that we work on these. And I know where Marymount's at. I've been through there a bunch. Kind of a nice area.
Yeah.
Nice houses. And he said, yeah, we restore Indy cars there. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. There's nowhere in Mariemont that works on Indy cars.
Yeah.
I'm a racer. I know what's around here. Zakira's was one of those like best kept secrets in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
It was right on the main drag. Everybody in Cincinnati drove right by it all the time. And you had no idea that there were Indy cars, and the amount of history in that building was insane.
Yeah, because they had what? It was like a 14 by 14 sign on the front that just said Zakira's. And
One
that was
little
it.
sign, like the side of it, like a garage sale sign.
Yeah.
Said Zakira's Garage. And the place looks like a library when you drive by.
Yeah.
It's only got one garage door, but once you go in, it's like a bowling alley. It's a big, deep building. So
Yeah, because it was a service garage for Bell.
Cincinnati
Yeah,
Bell
Cincinnati
trucks.
Bell trucks.
Yeah, it was designed for the trucks to drive in one end and drive out the other. And so we start talking, and Jim said, yeah, we restore cars there. And Dad said, well, I do pinstriping and lettering. And Jim said, give me your card. We need some work. So within a month, Dad went there and did the numbers on what turned out to be the 1926 Boyle valve Miller. It's at the Collier Museum now.
Okay.
And Dad, I remember I was at college and I called home. This is before cell phones and everything. I called home and Dad said, you're not going to believe that place. I went there. You got to see it. So we went there, became friends with them. Over the years, I would take my restorations down there and show them because I wanted to show off. It's like, it'd be like taking one of your Bonneville cars to Al Teague's shop.
Yeah.
Like, look what I did, dude. Because,
Yeah.
he's a hero and you want to impress him.
Yeah, and it gives you a little bit of clout. You're not just some guy that,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I tinker with this stuff, but in
I wanted
reality,
to show him, like,
Yeah.
I'm serious about this. So,
Yeah.
and I would take cars there and we became friends and I'd go eat lunch with them. And in 2011, I had my shop here in Goshen. I'm restoring sprint cars for Ken. I had restored a Curtis Indy car, 1949 Indy car, so Offie powered. So I was pretty serious. I was a vintage race car restorer. I was that guy. And I got a call from Jim at Zakira's, and he said, we are in the middle of restoring the 1923 Indy winning Miller, the Tommy Milton car. This is the winning car from 23. We lost one of our workers is out with back surgery. This is February now. This is February, like early February. Jim said, will you come in and help me finish this car? It's got to be finished and driving and ready to go to Indy in May. That's 3 months away.
Yeah.
I go down there. It's like a chassis with an engine sitting in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jesus. And Jim's like, everything is here to do it. Everything's done. It needs assembled, plumbed, all the plumbing, brake cables, fuel lines, put together, fired, and then taken Indy. And Jim, being Jim, a real car guy, he said, any hours you want to work, I'll be here. If you want to work till 3 a.m, I'll stay with you. And of course I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. I can get this thing done.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, holy shit. And within one day I went from, damn, I'd like to be able to touch a Miller someday to I'm asshole deep in this thing, bending fuel lines. So jumped in there, helped them, and it was kind of like, this is my one chance to impress Zakira's. So went in there, worked my ass off, got the car done, spent a week testing and tuning it with my ass in the seat.
Yeah.
So like within a month here, I'm driving a Miller and got this thing dialed in, took it to Indy. That was one of the first times I had the historical feel of doing something monumental, and it set in. We took the car to Indy, and you're in the thrash. It was a thrash. We've all done thrashes.
Yep.
And we were in the thrash the whole 3 months. So there was no time to breathe, no time to even think about what we're doing. We get the car done, we take it to Indy, and my dad's there, and we get the call like to move the cars out onto pit lane. So I'm in the driver's seat, they're hand pushing the car, Dad's pushing, the owner and his buddy, they're pushing, and we go through Gasoline Alley out onto pit row, and Dad leans down and says, when was the last time this car went through here? And I thought a minute, I'm like, 84 years ago?
Yeah.
And we all got real quiet. And everyone was just, at once, we're all like, holy shit. This car has been here in 84 years, and last time it was here at fucking 1.
Yeah.
And it was just like one of those moments like, God damn, this is cool. And since then, I've had a lot of those moments. It's cool, but that was the first one that really kicked me in the gut. Like, this is serious. So the car went there and it ran, made laps. It was awesome. That was over the weekend. Monday morning, Zakira's called and said, we want you full time. So I went to work there full time.
Yeah.
You know, I had my own shop, but I kept doing Ken's cars. That was my gig, is I worked at Zakira's full time, but I did Ken's cars at night and on weekends.
Yeah.
And Zakira's was cool enough to be like, yeah, that's your customer. You keep doing it. And they knew that Ken was going to support them too.
Yeah.
And the deal with Zakira's is that Zakira's was ground zero for millers. And that's where my miller training began.
Yeah.
It would take a whole nother podcast to give the miller history.
Oh yeah.
But
it's so impressive too.
The quickest way to tell people is you've all heard of Offenhauser. That's Miller. And the way it works is Miller started Miller Racing. He was designing engines. In 1917, he designed a 4-cylinder engine. That engine became Offenhauser engines that we know. Miller was a genius. He built all these wild, crazy designs. He developed stuff in racing that we still use to this day, but he was a terrible businessman.
Oh, yeah.
He went bankrupt 2 different times.
Yeah.
The second time he went bankrupt was the final time in 1932. The bank seized everything. It went to auction, and his head machinist, Fred Offenhauser, bought it.
Yeah.
And overnight it became Offenhauser, and the rest was history. And it's one of those, some people say it's like a tragic tale because everybody knows Offenhauser, but very few people know Miller. And myself and a handful of others have made it our mission to change that and to get Miller out there. And I'm proud to say that I think more people know of Miller now today than at any other time, other than when he was building stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, I only know of Miller, from working on stuff with you and, being involved with Jim and Zakira's and stuff. Other than that, I'd have absolutely no knowledge of it.
Yeah, and that's why I pushed it on my Instagram so much and just telling people go down this rabbit hole. You'll cuss at me because I get those texts from people you son of a bitch. I just wasted 3 days online reading about Miller. And I'm like, isn't it awesome? They're like, it's amazing, but I can't put it down, shit like that. So the reason that Zakira's was ground zero for Miller's was Dean Butler that owns Zakira's. He was the owner. He had the majority of the wooden patterns from Harry Miller, the original wooden patterns.
Yeah.
And tens of thousands of the original drawings, all the blueprints, and they were all there in-house, and you've gotten to see them.
Oh, yeah.
And I try to share them with people. So because they had the drawings and the patterns, they could reproduce brand new Miller parts. And I mean, that was when I first learned about casting brand new transmissions and engines. Yeah. And, I mean, if you're not around that, it's big magic.
Oh, yeah.
To we're going to cast an engine block.
Yeah.
You can't do that. GM does that.
Yeah.
But you can do that.
Yeah, and it's even the little stuff. Jim brings me over, hey, I machined this transmission case and I need these welded on here that we weren't able to pull from a casting, and welding up DD on axle fixtures. And,
that's cool.
It's just
you've become that guy now.
Yeah,
I'm gone, so now you get Jim's bringing everything to you.
Yeah.
And it's cool. You're getting to see what I experienced. You look, Jim will bring you something. You'll look at something Miller did, and you're like, wow, that's pretty. And then you got to try to figure out how the hell he did it. And you're trying to figure out how he did it, and you're like, yeah, I can CNC this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And then it dawns on you, these guys did this 100 years ago with manual machines.
Yeah.
And then you just feel like a dumbass.
Oh, yeah, because one of the most impressive things I found is you always post up the picture of the front gear drive set for the V16, and everybody's like, it's Photoshop, that would never work.
I love that.
And I'm like, I have touched this, it is not Photoshop.
That's my favorite. That the picture and the video, picture of the V16's gear drive that we posted, it popped up on Bang Shift, ran it, and so many different websites have ran that picture, and every time they do, you're right, the comments are hilarious. The 2 best comments are, it's Photoshop, it'll never work.
Yep.
And then the other comment that is my favorite, and I don't even argue it because it's pointless, I don't have enough time, is everyone comments, good luck timing that. that's a timing nightmare.
Yeah.
And what they don't know is
They're just all idlers.
they're all idlers. There is no timing there. There's only 4 gears. The top 4 gears are the only ones that count.
Yeah.
And they don't even count from. So when you put like a gear, like your timing chain on your small block Chevy, and you got to line up the dots, that Miller's not even that way. You can put that gear on the cam, just bolt it on there, and then there's where it bolts to the cam, that is adjustable.
Okay.
So you actually like adjust the cam itself on the gear. So all those gears are all just drive gears.
Yeah.
There is
Because
no timing
isn't
there.
one of them it bolts on with like five indexing holes, so you can
Correct.
flip it one way or the other and get within like 1 degree of changing. I mean, it was just impressive.
Yeah, it's 5 holes, and you can flip the gear side to side, and they're not an equal. It's spacing, and that's Leo Guzin. We're gonna go right back to him, and by flipping it and changing the pattern from the gear to the cam, it's almost endless. You can get within like 1.5 degrees of timing.
Yeah.
But I love that when people are like, "Well, that's a timing nightmare." I'm like, there is no timing.
Yeah.
It's just a pretty gear thing, and it's loud.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another thing. Guys are like, "Oh, that's so loud." Hell yeah, it's loud. It's a race car.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear the exhaust way before you ever hear that.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially on especially on a Miller or an Offie, they've got a tone to them.
They scream. I mentioned Leo Guzin. The whole story with Harry Miller is 3 guys: Harry Miller, Leo Guzin, and Fred Offenhauser. And when you go down the rabbit hole, you'll learn that Leo Guzin was the draftsman. He did all the drawings, and then Fred Offenhauser was the machinist. And if I just got asked yesterday, Dan Webb and I were talking, and Dan said, it's true that if you took one of those guys out of the equation, it would not have happened. And I said, you're right. It is.
Yeah.
It's that they were that important. It was, if you took one guy out of that equation, we don't have Offenhauser. We don't have Harry Miller. It all would have crumbled.
Yeah.
Because Harry could think this shit up. He was cool. His most, the way he was a weight freak. He was one of the very first racers to ever focus on light, being light. There's one car before Harry. It's at the Indianapolis Museum. It's that crazy. It's just a chassis with an engine, and it's got holes drilled everywhere in it. I can't think of the name of it. It's a really cool car. That car showed up at Indy, and it was too heavy, and they were trying to get it light, so they drilled holes in everything. It wasn't by design. They were trying to get it in the field. But Harry Miller was one of the first guys to actually try to design stuff light. He drilled nuts and bolts. Everything, he would look at a part and say, that's wonderful, make it lighter. And they'd bring it back to him. You're close, make it lighter.
Yeah.
And today that's rule number 1 in racing, but in the 20s it was not.
Yeah, because I mean that's one of the cool things I like about the Miller engines is I don't know what the technical part's called, but that holds the crank bearings, all of that stuff. Yeah, like inside the case, the little brass castings that hold the crank, it's all hollowed out.
All webbed, it's all hollowed out.
Yeah,
everything. When you look at, and it's a structural. It's very pleasing structurally to an engineer or anyone that fabricates, because when you look at any part on a Miller, every single rib, every single part of that casting has a purpose of strength. If it's not there structurally for strong, it's not there.
Yeah.
It's not there for prettiness. And I've even tried to test them. Like, what's this rib? Does this rib really need to be here?
Yeah.
And then you look at it bolted on the car, you're like, oh yeah, that would have broke off.
Yep.
I love that. And you're exactly right. Everything's just drilled and empty, and it's the Miller stuff. But Miller could think that up. At the time in the 20s, in the teens, if you go back to the teens at Indianapolis, there were years that there was no cubic inch limit, and there were cars showing up at Indy like 600 cubic inch cars.
Oh wow!
And these, now you say, oh wow, the real big oh wow there were cars that showed up that were 500 to 600 cubic inch 4 cylinders.
Yeah.
So these pistons were like the size of like a coffee can or
Yeah.
bigger. The problem was everything was cast bronze or steel. So these big, huge engines had these big, huge pistons and rods banging up and down for 500 miles on Babbitt bearings, and they just beat themselves to death.
Yeah.
And they could make horsepower. They could make horsepower to go fast, but they couldn't keep them together for 500 miles. And Harry was a smart enough guy to say, okay, so the rules right now are by 1920, let me think, by like the early 20s, the rules had got it down to where the cubic inch, they started making the cubic inch way smaller so that it would be competitive in European as well, because European racing was getting big. But Harry was the first guy that decided, instead of 4 big heavy pistons, what if we did 8 that were the exact same cubic inch, but if we did 8, they'd be lighter pistons.
Yeah.
And Harry's brain went right to, well, what if it's 16 of them? Then they're real tiny.
Oh, yeah.
What if we did 24? Then they're real tiny.
Yeah.
And his brain was 16 little light pistons could go up and down all day long and not hurt any bearings.
Yeah.
To where, and make the same amount of horsepower as a 4-cylinder of the same cubic inch. And it's the whole thing with Ferraris and Lamborghinis to this day. Those V12s and stuff, it's a lighter rotating mass,
Yeah.
But the problem creates is more moving parts. So now you've doubled or tripled the valve train. So there's, it's like, yeah, you gain longevity of it doesn't pound itself to death, but now you've just tripled your chance of valve spring failure.
Yeah.
So it's a weird balance of what's going to work. But Harry was that guy. He could do that, and that was his claim to fame. He could think it up, but he could not design it, and he couldn't make it.
Yeah.
That's where Guzin and those guys came in.
Yeah.
Guzin could take those crazy ideas and draw them, and if everyone that ever works on Miller stuff, like even at our shop at Zakira's and then the Harry Miller Inc. up north now, we all think of like, what part do you play? Are you the Harry Miller? Are you the Leo Guzin? Or are you the Fred Offenhauser?
Yeah.
And, and all my machinists, they're all like, we're the Fred Offenhauser. We're machining the parts.
Yeah.
And then my partner Ed, he's the Harry Miller. He's the head guy. He's thinking, he's making the business choices and he's getting things going, but he's also building the engines. He's a hell of an engine guy. I try to like to think I'm more the Guzin side, because when it comes time to build a bracket, if we have to build something from scratch, I can draw it on paper.
Yeah.
And I've machined and built enough stuff to where if I hand you a bracket that I've drawn, build it to that, and it's going to work. Yeah. 99% of the time it's going to work. And I like that.
Yeah. And now you're turning into quite the metal shaper too.
Oh, Jesus. I was thinking on the way down here, because you're right. I got thrown into the fire pit on learning metal shaping. And you and I have talked about this. You've been awesome. I cannot stress, I tell people that all the time, how awesome you've been with helping me and forthcoming. And I try not to wear you out. Yeah. Because, but anytime I have questions, you're really cool about that. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, like we talked about on the last episode, there's enough work for everybody.
Yes.
We're never going to steal work from each other. And I've been that way for a long time.
Yep. You and I've talked about that years ago.
Yeah.
I remember you and I talking about that because, we're in the same town and we're building hot rods, and you and I just laugh like, there's enough work for everyone. We don't have to fight each other. Yeah. And on top of that, we all have our specialties. So let's send work to the specialist. You've sent me stuff before. I've sent you stuff. It works out great.
Because I'll give you, the same like what you were talking about. I'll give you as much information. I'll teach you everything I know, because I don't look at you as a threat. I look we're going to work together to help the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and no, I'm never going to get to your level, and I don't want to. But even if I was able to, I'm never going to be a threat. Yeah, there's enough room and enough work for all of us. Yep. I got thrown into the metal thing, and I've told you before. I just told Dan Webb this too. Or no, it was Bill Beiser. Do you know Bill Beiser?
I don't think so.
He's a metal shaper back in the day. Pretty well known. He did some. I just went to his house yesterday, and he's done some neat. It's one of those deals. You ever walk into a guy's shop, and you see the pictures on the wall, and you're like, "Oh shit, you did that car?" Yeah. Oh wait, you did that car, and it all clicks. That was Bill Beiser. Okay. He was a metal shaper. Still is. He's kind of backing off now, but I was telling him yesterday, I've always wanted to learn metal shaping. I like it. It's awesome. It's black magic. You know, everyone looks at it the same way. It was the only thing left on in this career path of mine that I hadn't learned. So I want to learn it. But I will tell you right now, I do not want to be a metal guy.
Yeah.
I don't don't put that on me, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, exactly.
I've talked. I love knowing how, but I don't want to put the time in to ever. I won't say master it because I don't think anyone ever masters it. You're always learning, but I don't. I guess what I'm saying is to get to a point where I could say, yeah, I'm a metal guy. I would have to just stop what I'm doing and just do metal work for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of focus away from everything else.
Yeah.
It's
like pinstriping,
Yeah, exactly.
I was lucky that I grew up doing pinstriping, and I feel I've mastered it, and I've got that in my pocket. But when people are like, can you teach me to pinstripe? I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I can show you what brushes to buy and the paint, and I can real quick say, okay, so here's how you mix it, and here's how to lay a stripe. Now do it for 20 years, and you're going to get good.
Yep.
That's what it takes. It's not really something you can read about or study. You just got to do it.
Yeah.
And the metal shaping I'm finding is that way. I did those blisters this week.
Yeah.
And it's the best I've done. What I noticed with those blisters was, I know it's just a blister and it's what you learn first, but I was able to, I knew I needed 2 blisters. I knew what size I needed. I made my buck. I hammered them out, planished them, cleaned them up, welded them in. They look really, really good. They're not going to take filler, just high build primer. They're that close.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to call you or text you once.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
Yeah.
That's to me, I'm like, okay, I got that. I'm pretty good there. Now, when it comes to like a big door skin and all that, I'm still lost.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll go over that when the time comes. Because I still owe you door skins for your 32.
Yeah. Yep. That's coming.
Yep.
We won't talk about that car.
Yeah. That'll be on one of the next episodes.
That car will return. Everyone's always asking, like, when are you going to work on your 32? It'll come. What I've been doing is I tore that car apart. Let's talk about the 32. After I say I don't want to talk about it. I built my 32 two-door when I was in college still. I had a 55 Chevy two-door sedan, two-door panel wagon, sedan delivery.
Yeah.
My dad was a big Tri-5 guy, and he had bought it when I was 2 years old, and then we always had it, and then I took it over. And it was always mine growing up, and I'd always tell my classmates, yeah, I got a 55 Chevy. And all my early years, 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, I collected parts for it. I collected patch panels, and I'll tell you, this will date it. This was in the 80s and early 90s. I bought a set of Chevy Rally Steelies that were 15-inch rallies. The fronts were cut down to 4.5 inches wide, and the rears were 14 inches wide because I was going to tub it.
Oh, yeah.
Because everything was tubbed in the 90s.
Yep.
So I was going to build this Pro Street 55 delivery, and I had collected everything for it, and I was 17 years old, and I just decided I want a hot rod. I like 55s, but I want a 32. I want a hot rod, damn it. So I sold that and went and found a 32 Ford two-door body. $2,400. That's what they were.
Oh man, those were the days.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. And this thing was, the deal was it was super solid. It didn't have any rust, but it was beat up everywhere. It had dings and dents everywhere.
Yeah.
And I didn't care. Really nice ones. I remember we went to Hershey. $4,800 to $6,500 would buy you a shiny, pristine 32 two-door body.
Yeah.
Like a nice one. Original paint. Perfect body. $4,000, $5,000.
Yeah.
And that might as well have been $1 million to me.
Yeah.
In fact, the $2,400 that was for I only had $1,800 saved up, and I went and gave $1,800 and a bunch of old gas station signs.
Yeah.
Which are probably worth more than a car now. But built that two-door, and you talk about hell raising. God damn, we drove that car hard.
Oh yeah.
You saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone around here saw it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a thing of legend around here.
Beat the shit out of that car. One of my favorite thing about that car was how many guys come up to me now and say my first ride in a hot rod was your sedan.
Yeah.
A lot more than I ever thought I gave rides.
Yeah.
But Nathan with upholstery.
Yeah, Nathan Stewart.
Yeah, I remember giving him a ride because he was 11 or 12 years old. We were at Indy Good Guys, and his dad, who worked for Ray Hall Racing, knew about my racing and came over to me and said, listen, I want you to take my son a ride in your hot rod. I trust you as a driver, but I want you to take him a ride.
Yeah.
And I knew what he meant. And, man, I took the kid for a ride. And Nathan remembers that, But there were so many of those, and I really liked that. That car was good for that, just beat the shit out of. But it started, I have no doubt we put 80 to 100,000 miles on that car.
Yeah.
And just destroyed it. It wore it out. I went through 3 different 327 engines. I blew Muncie's one after another, breaking Muncie's, breaking rear ends. But in 2000, I don't remember what year, 10 years ago, I tore it down to redo it. And and then I moved to Michigan.
Yeah.
And it's just been torn down ever since.
So was Indy Good Guys the one you got kicked out of, or was that Columbus doing donuts in the infield?
That was Louisville Street Rod Nationals.
Oh, was it?
And the first trip there.
Yeah.
So that set the precedent. The first show I took that car to was Good Guys Columbus. We trailered it there because it wasn't even registered for the street yet. And it wasn't finished. Like, how when your hot rods are first done and you take a first test drive and like the wiring's hanging down and everything. I went to Columbus Good Guys like that. And then Louisville Street Rod Nationals was the first show I drove the car to. And me and Scott Williams, my roommate Scott, we thrashed all night, finishing it up, buttoning it up, and we drove it to Street Rod Nationals. And that was a neat deal. I didn't at the time. I didn't know any of the magazine people, and we drove it there, and it was about 11:30 in the morning, and me and Scott were sleeping in the car, like racked out, mouths open, drooling, sleeping. And Brian Brennan with Street Rodder magazine went by on his golf cart, and he saw us, and he stopped, and he took pictures of us sleeping in it.
Yeah.
Like, you take pictures of your buddy.
Oh, yeah.
And Dad was standing there, and Dad motioned him over and said, hey, I just want to let you know those boys, they're not hungover. Those boys thrashed all night on that thing. They never went to sleep and drove it here.
Yeah.
And Brian was like, are you serious? And he said, yeah. So then it turned into a story and ended up getting like the car. They did a photo shoot with the car. So that was the first day. The second day, Saturday, it rained. And Scott was there taking pictures. He was a photographer. And we had went on a side dirt road outside the fairgrounds, and we took pictures of me sliding the car through the dirt, hauling ass, throwing gravel. Yeah. Well, then it rained, and Scott's like, we should go out there in the grass and rip some donuts and get some more pictures. And, of course, I'm like, yeah. So we went out, and sure enough, ripped a bunch of donuts in this. That's a state fairgrounds. Yeah. And the state boys came in, and they were pissed. And they escorted us out. We had a state patrol escort, like 3 state patrols escorted us out. Ricky Hacker? Yeah. He was there. First time I ever met Ricky. Didn't even know who he was. He walks up in the middle of, the cops are there, and he walks up. Starts cussing the cops. Yeah. You sons of bitches don't know shit. And I'm like, this guy's going to get us all thrown in jail. Yeah. We've been buddies ever since. Yeah. After that, I'm like, this guy's awesome. I got thrown out of the Street Rod Nationals for that. And then, God, that just set the precedent. I remember we did donuts and Good Guys. We did donuts at the campground at Indy, but we didn't get kicked out. But we pissed off a bunch of people because they threw mud on their, motorhomes and shit. Yeah. Yeah.
They'll never get the mud out of their leaning, crying baby dolls,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. God damn. That car's just got some wild shit.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember the first picture I ever saw of it was when you did the wheel stand at the line at Edgewater.
Yes. That was surprising. We didn't expect that. The car, it was a hot rod with a dropped axle, and then I decided to put a straight axle in it just to change things up. And the screwed up thing is I did that just as like, I had a straight axle sitting there.
Yeah, because it was like a weekend, like, let's just do this real quick, right?
Fuck yeah, it was like a weekend. Like, it was ridiculous. I had a chrome straight axle with spindle mount Americans laying there, and it was more like a mock-up. Like, let's pull my axle out of the sedan and put that straight axle in there and see what it looks like. So I built a set of hairpins and bolted it up and got it to steer, and then was like, okay, let's go drag racing.
Yeah.
It's like, we shouldn't have done that, but lots of Jack Daniels was involved.
Oh, yeah.
At that time, I'm drinking a bottle of Jack a day at that time.
Yeah.
It was good times. And just, hell raising. But when I did that, I put the straight axle in it, and I told my old man, I said, hey, I want to go drag race this thing. It's, fast piece. And Dad, being Dad, said, my truck will kick that thing's ass.
Yeah.
And
This is his 32, the Hillborn truck, right?
The Hillborn truck. And I think it was just the rumor of that. The story got out, and it snowballed into this big drag race.
Yeah.
Dan and Josh are going to have a drag race at Edgewater, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, it snowballed to the point where Dad and I both went back to the drawing board and started like changing things around.
Oh yeah. You gotta be
Oh,
competitive.
yeah,
You can't
yeah,
just go for it.
Exactly. So on my end, I always had junk Hurst shifters in my sedan, and it would always I broke Muncie's just because my shifter was such shit. I'd go to slam third, and it would go into 2 gears at once and blow up Muncie.
Yeah.
So I stepped up. I spent $300 and bought a big straight rod competition shifter, and then I built a 486 gear, 486 9-inch. Put that in the back. Brian Tarter had a set of 10-inch wrinkle wall slicks. Put on the back of it for that. That was me getting serious about going drag racing. The engine was just this beat 327, but it's a 327.
Yeah.
You can turn it 10 grand and just launch it.
Yeah, did it have the injector on it at that time, or
No,
were you carbureted?
Carbureted. Had a Vertex mag. I was running a Vertex. I always ran a Vertex mag on the street on that car. That drove guys nuts.
Yeah. Because remember, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't run a mag on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure you can. It was carbureted, but at the same time, Dad was building a 327 for his truck. Like, he'd already been building one. Well, halfway through the build, his build changed. It went from just building a stock 327 to they're building a hell of an engine for that truck.
Yeah.
Ronnie Miller, Ron Miller. Ron Miller had his hands in it.
Oh yeah.
So it's getting roller rockers, everything.
Yeah.
Stout engine. I remember Dad got his engine together, and I went over and he said, test drive the truck, see what you think. And it's an automatic.
Yeah.
And I remember even asking him, I'm like, are you going to do anything? He's like, nope, I'm just going to build a 327 and kick your ass. So I went to drive the truck, and I remember I put it in gear and I hit the gas and nothing happened. He had put like a 3,500 stall speed, and it had Gil and Mike's build a trans for it that shift hard. I'm like, you son of a bitch. You're doing the same stuff I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
So by race day, we were both on slicks with some serious stuff to back it up, and rolled up to the line. And by then, like I said, everyone knew it. So all you guys were there watching. Yeah. And Ryan Pope was there. He was the one that took that picture. And I had launched the car on the street a bunch of times, and it would it would launch good. It never would lift the front. It would just launch good. It would spin for about 6-7 feet, shudder and hook and go. And I'm like, okay, that's good enough. Because when I get to Edgewater, it might have a little more bite. Yeah. First pass, I revved that thing up and dumped it, and all I saw was sky. It pulled about 1.5 foot high wheelie, carried the wheelie. I got my attention, like, holy shit, this thing just did a wheelie. I remember I beat Dad in that race, the first race, and when we were we were coasting to shut down. Dad came up next to me, holding his hands up with the motion, like, you just did a wheelie this high. Yeah. Like, that's all we cared about. Like, some of this just did a wheelie. Yeah. So we went back, and Dad and I were like, we did not expect this thing to do that. I thought for sure it would break something before it would ever do a wheelie. So went up second pass. Of course, Dad's like, best 2 out of 3. Best 2 out of 3. So we went up for the second pass, and it pulled another beautiful wheelie. It carried that one out about 12, 14 feet. And I beat Dad on that one. It ran a 12.4. And there, it's funny because there's guys out there that don't understand how quick a 12.4 is.
Yeah.
It's fast.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's granted. I know there's drag cars that go fast, but for a street car,
Yeah, a 32 sedan street car, that's pretty
oh
quick.
yeah. So it was fun. And then the third pass, I didn't line up against Dad. I lined up against another guy, and by then I was thinking in my head, if I do a big wheelie, I started remembering the front end and the weekend we put it in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this thing shouldn't be doing this. And I started thinking, what if this son of a bitch, goes way up in the air and comes down and breaks and everything else. And of course, me being me, I'm like, fuck it. That'd make a cool picture.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So I revved it up as hard, just on the ground and dumped it as hard as I could to see how big a wheelie I could do, and then snapped an axle.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was done.
Yep.
But that was the drag racing life of that car. It twisted that body so bad. It put like 4 different cracks in the body.
Yeah.
Twisting it. It wasn't good on it.
Yeah, but that's what they're there for.
That's a fun car. That thing will be back.
Yeah.
What I've been doing is I've been collecting parts for it. Mm-hmm. I got badass Halibrands for it, and just engine out of a sprint car that I'll put in it.
Yeah. And the good thing is I know you won't take it easy on it either.
Nope, exactly. Now what? Now where I'm up in Michigan. I had moved up there. My wife's from Michigan.
Yep.
And met her at Detroit Autorama. Zakira's is closed down, so now we're up there. And when Zakira's they didn't close down, they relocated. They closed down the race car side of their operation. Yeah. And I know you were involved with them for a long time. And you and I both have had good experience with Zakira's. They're still open. They work on just vintage sports cars now.
Yeah.
And
more
now,
of a maintenance and light restoration type thing.
Exactly. And Dean Butler kept all the patterns and drawings, and he needed a new home for them. So now we became the new home for him up north. And that's what I'm doing, is just restoring Miller's up there full time.
Yeah, because the namesake was completely open, so you guys adopted the Harry Miller Incorporated, right?
Correct. Dean had found out that Harry Miller Inc., the namesake, the trademark had lapsed, and it was open. So he bought it. He grabbed it back, and then we bought it off Dean. So now we own Harry Miller Inc., the original trademark from the company. Yeah. Which it's the cool part is we can build continuation cars. Yeah. Which is value-wise, it makes the cars more valuable. But it's also cool that when you buy Miller parts from us, they're coming from Miller Inc. Yeah. That just makes it cool.
Yeah. And then it's not, it's a reproduction part. It's like you said, it's a continuation, but it's a continuation off the original. You didn't re-engineer anything. Exactly. You just took the original drawings and patterns and changed maybe some little things that, like materials, are a little better now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we still struggle to do what they did 100 years ago. Yeah. It's insane how good those guys were.
And like one thing I found with working with Jim is, like you said, it took all 3 to make it work. If one of them wasn't there, but it was, the drawings aren't machinable drawings. It'll say, you need a 2-inch diameter spindle for a 2-inch bearing, which most people, wouldn't think anything of it, but you got to have the right tolerances. So, they would draw it, and then the machinist would have to interpret and then analyze, like, this is what needs to be done to make it happen.
Yeah, you were expected to know that as a machinist back then. You were expected to know.
Yeah, because Jim brings me stuff all the time, and he's like, don't pay any attention to these stupid numbers. They don't make any sense.
And it's all in fractions.
Oh, yeah.
There's no decimals.
Yep.
It's all in fractions. It's amazing. It's amazing how the drawings are done. But then it's also the percentage of actual mistakes, like shit that's totally wrong in the drawing, is incredibly low. Yeah, it's the drawing. I mean, they're right when if you machine everything to the drawings and minus the tolerances, the stuff will bolt together and the engine will run. Yeah. It's crazy. At Miller, they never did a full engine drawing that shows everything. There are no drawings like that. There's just, for an engine, there's these 180 drawings. Make those 180 parts, bolt them together, and it'll run. Yeah. And it's like, damn, that's pretty badass.
Oh, yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Or I did have let's see if I got any new questions. But I did have one question that came through on Instagram. Let's see if I can pull that up. I'm not very prepared today. It's kind of an interesting question. So, garden tractors at Indy. Why aren't car collectors collecting them to go with their vintage Indy cars? So maybe kind of go into the what that even means, like what the history of the garden tractor.
Wheel horse, of course. So the Wheel Horse Company, Wheel Horse lawnmowers, in the late 50s and then all in the 60s in the Roadster era, which many consider like the best era. Wheel Horse donated lawn tractors to each team to pull the cars around. Today, when you go to today they have golf carts, and then a lot of teams have their own like pit carts that's a tow vehicle. Well, back, they have gators and all that stuff today, and everyone's got one. Back then, they didn't have any of that. So to pull the cars around, each team would have a garden tractor. And when you look in the old pictures at Indy, you'll see pictures of like A.J. Watson and A.J. Foyt and Roger Ward and all these famous guys riding lawn tractors around. Yeah. So it was a huge part of it. And to answer the question, some collectors are. I've seen. Let me think. Don Smith in Terre Haute, his collection had a lawn tractor in it. I think I've only seen 2 or 3 guys that have done it. The reason that it's not probably a big thing is that Wheel Horse did not keep track of those lawnmowers. Yeah. So it's not like you can go on a hunt and find A.J. Watson's Wheel Horse. Yeah.
They all look the same.
Yeah. If you could like trace them by serial numbers, then there'd be guys looking for certain ones. Because if you own the 1961 Watson Sprint car and you could find the lawn tractor that pulled it in 61, that's pretty serious. Yeah. There's no way of tracking them, so that hurts. So the guys that are collecting them, they're just doing it. They're just finding an old Wheel Horse and they're painting it like they were then and putting it with the car. Yeah. So to further answer his question, I'm surprised more collectors aren't. Yeah. It does make sense. It's cool. But as far as using it, I've thought of that to myself. That'd be noisy. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Driving my lawn tractor around at Indy, it's not like a golf cart where if you drive to talk to someone, you're going to have to turn it off. Stuff like that. Yeah. It's just silly stuff. But it's a cool question because I agree. You should see more of them. Yeah. That'd be cool. Your Indy Roadster you built is badass. Oh, that was something that I got to. Oh, it's right behind me. Yep. Let's see, where's it at? It's behind me. I got to be a part of that. That was cool. Yeah, I've got a lot of your original sketches and drawings that came with the book from when you guys were going to build it when Dan brought it over. Yeah, that's such a neat car. I'm glad you ended up with it, and it's still like together, and and it's going to survive. Yeah, because a car like that either goes into a collection and never gets seen again, or just goes away. Yeah, or it comes here and gets dismantled for parts and just sits. I love it. As soon as I saw the pictures on Instagram of the flathead in the Bonneville car, I immediately knew. I'm like, oh, the Roadster lost its engine. Yep. Yeah, and we're talking about doing. I don't know if I want to put another flathead in there. Jim's trying to get me to start buying offie pieces off of him to put a 4-cylinder in it. But I think like a 262 Chevy dry something laid on its side underneath the hood would be pretty sweet. I agree. Just something different you don't see often. I agree. There's a lot of guys that have put like Toyota 4-cylinders and other like what's the one? It starts with an A. I can't think of the name of it now. There's different guys. There's a Roadster that's got it in there. They look kind of like an Alfie, but a Jag, a Jag engine would look cool in there because it has an Alfie look to it. That'd be cool in there. There's a lot of cool anything inline you could put in there and lay over. Yeah, that'd be badass. Excellent. Yeah. Just too many ideas, not enough time or money to do them all. I totally agree. Yeah. Well, one other question I think I'm going to add to the show every time. What would you want to tell any young person or other hobbyist that wants to pursue, I guess, getting deeper, take it from more of a hobby to, like a side hustle kind of thing, or get in the industry, whether it be race car stuff, fabricating, art. I mean, I just tell everybody, just get out there and do it. But it's such a deep question. It is. And my brain went right to that too. Just do it. I agree with you. Some of the things I can tell you is because I do career days, and I also you've done where we speak to the vocational kids at the car shows. So I've had to think about that. Some of the things I've thought about and I know would help kids is not even kids, young guys, anyone. The guys that are in the industry, you, me, Jesse James, from the top to the bottom, everyone you can think of, there's nothing special about them. They're regular guys.
Yep.
Don't think in your head like, well, those guys have skills above me and there's just no way I could be that guy. Yeah, you can. They're all normal guys.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone we know, there's a reason why all you, me, like all of our friends that own a lot of the hot rod shops all across the country. There's a reason why we're all buddies and we know each other, because we're all just normal guys. It's not like an elite club.
Yeah.
It's nothing special. If you're just building stuff in your back garage, single garage, that's a lot of it started there.
Oh yeah.
When I first met you, you were in a small brick, like old schoolhouse. Yeah. And it wasn't big.
Yeah, I think it was like 1,200 square feet. It was itty bitty.
Yeah. And and then I started at my dad's place. I had the back room, one back room. That was my little area. Don't think there's anything special about it. Another thing I tell kids, I tell the vocational kids, and this gets mixed reaction, is don't worry about having like Snap-on everything, the big name brand stuff. Worry about just getting stuff that works for you.
Yeah.
I've said that in the vocational schools of a 9/16 Snap-on wrench and a 9/16 Harbor Freight wrench. They both turn bolts. And if you can't afford a Snap-on, don't break yourself trying to do that. And don't worry about what guys like, Jesse James are using. Guys like that get that stuff for free. Yeah. I like Jesse's a good friend. He's a good, cool dude. But you can't get caught up on like what is he using? What's he doing? Yeah. I know you've got an awesome setup with Bailey, and I highly recommend people to use Bailey stuff. I use Bailey stuff.
Yeah, but I mean,
everyone. I'm thinking like with like the English wheels. There's certain English wheels out there that are unobtainium. They're so expensive.
Like the Renalas and stuff.
Exactly, they're beautiful, but you don't have to have those. Yeah. You can start. You get that shit later in life.
Yeah, you kind of creep up to it. I didn't go out and buy everything I've got now. Same thing with you.
Exactly.
You started with nothing, and then you have extra pennies, and you throw that towards better equipment to make you more efficient.
Exactly, and the reason I say that is like guys stress on that. They stress. Well, I don't have this, and I don't have that. So figure it out, man. Yeah. There's a lot of my tricks of the trade and methods that I use are because I didn't have the right tool. Yeah. I don't have the right tool for that, for a specific type of like a rivet. Well, I don't have the correct mandrels for it, but I figured out, this punch, I can take a grinder and grind it and make it a divot. And I made it work for me. And, now today, maybe I do have the right tool, but I learned how to do it without the right tools.
Yeah. And if you learn how to do it the hard way, it makes the easy way that much easier because you've struggled.
It does. And it teaches you. You learn shit about that. That's something you can tell guys that grew up not worrying about. I shouldn't say not worrying about. Guys that grew up trying to piece shops together, they're also guys that when a machine breaks, a lot of times they can fix it themselves. Yeah. I've seen you work on your tooling. We all do. If your shear is not shearing real clean, you don't call in the company. You get down there and figure it out. Like, how do I tighten this thing up? How do I make it cut better? And that's from having junk used equipment. Oh yeah. You and I've had worn out equipment that we've had to figure out how to make it work better.
Yeah. And a lot of times, with that kind of stuff, it's like I've got a Grobe bandsaw. Grobe's still in business. I called them, gave them the serial number. And they're like, you realize that's pre-World War II. We don't make parts for that anymore, right? So it's the same thing. A lot of the equipment we use is so old that you can't call anybody. You have to figure it out and make it happen. Yep. And, that goes hand in hand with, talking about kind of just getting out there and doing it. You know, nobody's going to come in here and fix anything or build what we need. You just have to do it.
Yep.
You know, stop stressing. How do I do this? I need to know every aspect of everything I'm doing. You just go for it and figure it out on the own. And as you go, and when you fuck it up, well, I don't want to do do that again.
That's
and
the
then
best.
you just,
That's the best lessons.
Yep.
The lessons heard the hard way.
Oh,
learned
yeah.
the hard way. You know, when we mentioned mini trucks, I had mini trucks when I was in college, and I went to college in Columbus, which is only an hour and a half from here. And every weekend I would drive home in the mini truck and we would do projects like build a 4-link, switch it over to 4-link, or C-notch it, or, you know, this, that, and the other. And the pressure of knowing we got to do this in 2 days, and not only does it have to work, but it has to haul my ass clear back to Columbus.
yeah.
That's awesome. But what I'm getting at is, so when you make a mistake, you learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, you know, that I really gotta, you know, why did it fail? Why did that bracket fail? Oh, this is why it failed. Okay, how do I keep it from doing that? To where, you know, you might look in a book, oh, this is how I build that bracket. But if you don't know why that bracket's designed that way, why is it a triangle? Well, because triangles are strong.
Yeah.
You know, shit like that. You learn that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and stuff like that teaches you time management. You know, you tear the whole back end off of a truck, and then you're like, wait, I don't have enough time to put it back together. You're going to suffer.
Oh yeah, yeah. It gets you, that's a good way to do it. You know, working on your own stuff. Another thing is do things your way as far as the style of hot rods you want to build. If you're building hot rods, if you're building customs, rock crawlers, motorcycles, choppers, build the shit you like. Build it your way. Don't let people tell you what is cool and what's the, you know, the hot setup.
Yeah.
I hate that shit. Build it your way. If you build stuff your way, you'll be happy. If you get some notoriety and you start getting customers because people like your style, that's a good thing. The next step is, don't let a customer come in and tell you how they want it built.
Yeah.
They showed up at your door because they liked your style.
Yep.
So stick with your style.
Yep.
That's a hard lesson to learn, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, I tell
Especially when you're hungry and you need the money, boy, you'll listen to some customers' bad
Yeah.
ideas.
Yep.
We've both been there. But that's another piece of advice I can tell guys is, boy, you know, just keep in mind there's a reason why that guy came to you.
Yep.
He liked stuff you built. So build it your way.
Yeah. And, you know, since I'm a fat guy, I always talk about, you know, it's the same thing with food. You don't go to the best steakhouse in town and tell them, I want my steak seasoned this way, prepped this way. You just say, I want a steak.
Yeah,
you know, it's the same thing. They're here because of what we do, not to tell us how to do our jobs. And you're going to get customers that do that, but you just have to either suck it up and deal with it or eliminate those type of customers from your life.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's two different types of success. Some guys measure success of how much money have I've made. I measure success of I can pick and choose my customers.
Yep.
You know, that I'm successful enough to where I can build what I want for who I want. And that sounds elitist. It sounds stuck up, but it's not, man.
Well, and that's a hard lesson to learn.
It's lowering my stress.
Yeah.
I'm 45 years old. I'm going to build what I want to build.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, because I mean, you've known me for a long time, and you've seen me go from that little tiny building to where I am now. And you know, I had employees and 20, 30 cars, and guess what? I'm still digging myself out of that hole because I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I want 2 or 3 customer cars. I want to do just enough work to pay my bills and then play with my own stuff for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
I don't want the shop to run me anymore. I want to run the shop.
And that's, to me, that's success.
Exactly.
That is success. We're not, you know, I'm not trying to become a millionaire. None of that.
Yeah.
I don't want a monster garage. I don't want none of that.
Yeah. We're not setting the world on fire. We're living what we want to do.
I mean, like, you look at like Alloway's Hot Rod Shop or Alan Johnson. Those shops are amazing. And when I was in my 20s, I thought that's what I wanted. Yeah. And you know, I was wanting to be the biggest, baddest hot rod builder ever. And the longer I went, I thought to myself, I don't know if I want that. I just want to build what I want to build. And you know, and look at my life. It was, I want to build race cars. Yep. And now I want to build, you know, this and that, and you know, you change things. And if I would have got locked into that big time hot rod shop, I would never gotten to race the Ford GT and build Indy cars and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
and it's funny how that
there's
evolves.
two different types of success there.
Yeah, like you said, when I was in my early 20s, not like I wanted to be the Chip Foose of Cincinnati,
Yeah.
But I don't want anybody to even know who I am. Like, I go to car shows now. I don't even wear anything with my logo on it. Like, I just want to disappear. I'll drive the Daytona to an event. I'll get out of the car and I'll run as far away as possible just because.
That's maturity.
Yeah.
It is. And it's success.
Yeah.
It is. I can't say it enough. To me, that's success. When you can pay your bills. You got an awesome shop here. Everything's here you want. There's cars here being worked on. It's all your style. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's my advice to guys. Build what you want. Do your thing.
And figure out what you want.
Yeah.
Figure out what you want in life. Like if you want to be Chip Foose or Troy, go for it.
Please.
If you don't, don't fall into that of letting people try to pressure you into bigger and better. Just kind of know yourself and stay the course.
Yep. Yeah. There was a guy here in Cincinnati that wanted to build hot rods, and he was a friend of mine, and he wanted us to partner up and open a hot rod shop, like get a location and open up a hot rod shop, and we're going to be huge. And I kept telling him I didn't want to, and he never could figure out why I didn't want to. At the time, I was in my 30s, and I had just scratched the surface of I don't think I want to be that Chip Foose of Cincinnati. I just kind of want to play with my own shit and do fun stuff.
Yeah.
And he has since opened up a hot rod shop, and he's doing decent. But I think even now he's realized because he doesn't go to the shows anymore. He kind of stays low key. He builds nice stuff, but and you know him.
Yeah.
But he's chill, and I'm proud of him for that. He did it. He builds but even now he's building what he likes.
Yep.
And he's got his own cars that are cool. And you don't. That's my advice. Do your own thing.
Yeah.
Stick to that line. It's hard, but it's hard when you're hungry and you need bills.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Guys bring in that project that you don't want any part of, but you got to pay bills. I get it.
Yep.
We've all done it.
Yep. Well, cool. We'll wrap it up, and I greatly appreciate you making the time to come in and talk to us today. And
I was swinging through, man. I had to drop off tires to a guy in Vandalia.
Yeah.
18-inch tires.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? You got any 18-inch tires? I'll give you $50 for them.
No, I don't have any. Any of your social media stuff you want people to follow or cool stuff to check out?
Just Instagram. My Instagram is Jacob's Ladder.
Is there any underscores or anything in there?
Yeah, Jacobs _ladder, and ladders with 1 D instead of 2 Ds. And that was just my own mistake because I'm a rookie. That's it. Instagram's really it. I don't mess with Facebook anymore. I got rid of Facebook. It got too weird.
Yeah.
And Instagram's following closely. That's it.
And
then of course
the Harry Miller. Of course.
Harry Miller Inc. EDL. You'll see me tag EDL Services. That's our parent company.
Yeah, and that's Edlin
Services. Yeah, that's the parent company. That's the buildings we're in. And if you're ever in the Troy, Michigan, which is about 40 minutes north of Detroit, look us up. Come by.
It's a very neat place.
People know that I've always been a closed door type of guy. I don't allow visitors. This place is the opposite.
Yeah.
It's open door. My partner Ed, his son Wes is great kid, and he is good at showing people around and meet. He runs our CNC machines. He does CAD drawings. He's not just a tour guide, but he's good at talking to people. And if you want to swing through and see the Harry Miller stuff, come on by. We're there, man. Come on.
And it's funny that you mentioned, this will be my last tangent, but you mentioned the locked door policy thing. Like when we first met,
there you go.
I'm like, how can this guy run a business being locked door policy? And here I am, for the past 6 years, locked door policy. Like
we're back to the advice for guys. Boy, the locked door policy is a good thing.
Yeah, lock yourself in.
Yeah.
Because,
visitor, I call them time monsters.
Yep.
I worked in a shop on the west side of Cincinnati that was a legendary shop for building hot rods and doing custom paint work. And I watched the retired time monsters shut that place down. Every single day at all times, there was 2 to 5 guys there just sitting there doing nothing, just walking around and talking to you. And I'm like, who are these guys? Like, oh, that's Billy. He just kind of hangs out. He's retired. He comes by and he hangs out. I'm like, why? He's in the way. He's wearing me out. And then I really saw the downside of that. And then I remember back in the day, I remember hearing about Billy Lane. I think it was Billy Lane. He had a shop when he was big. Like, he's still big. He's awesome. I like Billy. But when his shop was super big, I talked to someone that said when you go there, you can go in the front. It's a showroom, and then you can look into the shop, but you cannot get to the shop.
Yeah. And
you can't get to talk to anyone. And he has a guy there that talks to you, and like he'll glad hand you and talk to you, but that's his job is to talk to you, so that Billy doesn't have to come talk to you, and the guy running the machine doesn't come talk to you. And I'm like, that's genius. That's how it has to be.
Yep.
Because boy, if you're a one-man operation and you got 2-3 visitors a day.
Yeah, I mean that's 2, 3, 4 hours gone.
Yeah, and you're not getting shit done.
I get crap all the time because like, how dare you lock the door? What if I want to come see my project or want to talk to you? Make an appointment.
It's part of it. Part of it.
It's like I don't want to be offensive or an asshole and just say tough shit. I'm not answering the door. But that's not fair of, somebody to come in and waste my time. Because like somebody comes in, wants to ask you a 20-minute question. That's 45 minutes worth of waste, talking about something. But then you've like, where was I? And you have to pick back up.
Oh, yeah.
That can mess up a whole day.
You're right. It's a very, very hard lesson to learn. And you do come off like an asshole.
Yep.
That's why it's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
You and I... You want to be a nice guy. You do. You want to be a nice guy and talk to guys, but boy, it's hard. And
it's just exhausting. So,
That's a good, locked door policy. I'm all about it.
Oh, yeah. Firm believer here. But cool. Thanks again. I really appreciate you coming on, and we definitely have to have you back on again.
Would love to.
And mention it to your dad. I'd like to have him if he's up to doing a podcast.
Dan Shaw here.
Yep. Yeah, we had a Dan Shaw-ism in the last episode. So
he's good. He's awesome.
Oh, yeah. He's always got good sayings.
I will, man. I appreciate it. And because, we've known each other a long time, and I always enjoy watching your work.
Yeah, same here.
You do the cool shit that I like to do as well. So good luck at Bonneville.
Yeah, thanks.
I've been there and did that. So.
Yep.
All right, man. See you.
Yep. Next week's guest is Jeff Peters, also known as Peterson Express from the Hot Rod Preserve in Texas. If you'd have any questions that you would like to hear in the discussion with Jeff and myself, please submit those to fabricationstationpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll get those queued up. That way you can hear your name and your questions on the podcast with Jeff and myself. Also, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. I really want this thing to take off and get better and better as we go. So by you subscribing, rating, and reviewing, we can kind of use that to help us get better and grow as things progress. So thanks for listening, and tune in next week.